It's a pleasure to be back with Share Cafe, and thanks for the opportunity to present again and give an update to the broader Share Cafe family. Can I go to the next slide? To the next slide, thanks. So SensOre was set up in 2019, for those who are familiar with the story, based on an ambition to change the way we're doing discovery for exploration, for all those critical minerals that are going to be essential to the world's development over the next decades to come. Driven by some of those big macro trends, increasing in population, standards of living in Asia and Africa rising to levels of metal demand that are equivalent to OECD countries, and that big thematic of climate change and energy transition that's driving a lot of the industry that we talk about today, particularly around lithium, cobalt, and nickel. Next slide. We've been, I guess, very much focused, and a lot of our revenue growth has come from companies who are active in that battery space. The IEA put out some pretty dramatic figures of the type of discoveries that we need to do to be able to meet metal demand over the next 2030, 2050. You're looking at plus 60 nickel mines. We've been discovering maybe 1 or 2 per year. Lithium, we know about the big names and the big discoveries being made, but there is a fraction of what's going to be needed if we're going to meet the demands for the future for renewable and battery industries. So we need to do something different. Next slide. So the industry has been responding. I mean, if you follow exploration expenditure, it's been increasing year on year, but discovery rates have been falling, and particularly discovery rates of top tier 1 discoveries. Tier 1 discoveries are the ones that BHP, Rio Tinto, long life, big resource, high grade, that will be profitable throughout the cycle. And as you can see from this graph, those big tier 1 discoveries, the ones at the bottom, are declining over time as well. So in the sector, we've got this massive increase in demand. At the same time, the quality, or the I guess the tier 1 nature of these deposits are declining over time. So we need to find a different way of being able to do things, look outside the box of where we've been exploring in the near mine area, and go and try and do something different. Next slide. Overall, this has led to, I guess, a decline in grades, increasing waste within the sector as we mine lower grade ore bodies, and a bigger footprint on the environment, encroaching on local communities. So what we need to do is also be able to be better targeting, be smarter about the way we explore, and be able to reduce the land disturbance and the CO2 emissions from our exploration activities as a sector as a whole. Next slide. So what we're using with Sensors technology is using artificial intelligence, machine learning, and great science to be able to better vector towards target, reduce pattern drilling, reduce data collection with invasive methods, and be able to leverage some of the vast changes that have happened in data sciences in the last decade, driven by computing power and artificial intelligence algorithms that have become more ubiquitous within all sectors. Next slide. So what is our technology? Our technology is really about aggregating all of the geoscience information that we have in Australia. We have a vast data portal now with 60 billion data points from east to west coast in Australia, combining our qualitative information. So when a geologist goes out in the field, they write a report, they record their observations, they draw a map. We've written algorithms that go and extract that information, and I'll talk about some of those in a second. We also use the geophysical information, the gravity and magnetics, and then we also use geochemistry, drilling data, and surface samples, which I guess make up almost similar to what in medtech would be your, I guess your geology is when you go and see a doctor, they give a diagnosis, that's your qualitative information. When you go and get an MRI, that's your geophysics information. And when you take a blood test or something, that's equivalent to the geochemistry. So we're seeing amazing advances in medtech, AI, and application to those areas that are transforming industries adjacent and further away. and we haven't applied that systematically to how we explore for minerals within the Earth's crust. Essentially, we're looking for anomalies that host the new ore bodies that are going to be undercover or in complex geology or in difficult community settings, where we can be more surgical about how we approach that. So we pull that information together into our platform, and then we have certain tools that allow us to get to discovery faster with less use of drilling. Next slide. So one of the things that we're very much excited about is our data platform. Now a cloud-based system where you can go and see a company, a tenement, an announcement on the ASX, and you can go and pull up the gravity, magnetics, the other layers that previously were only the domain of an expert in the field. And it might take them weeks to be able to pull together the paper records and some of the files from government, etc., to be able to image this in a project. We've done all that for our people so that now that people can analyze that information conventionally, or they can utilize our tools to be able to make discoveries or review an investment, where we've seen a lot of people wanting to be able to do that faster than others when an announcement's made. Next slide. Just click one more time. So I wanted to just talk about sort of how AI and machine learning can be utilized to be able to extract information. So here we're looking at a geophysics, a combined gravity and magnetic data set, where we're extracting the information about the changes in the borders, where we're seeing differences in the rock properties in those areas. Now, this is under 200 meters of cover. You can't see it with a satellite. You can't image it. It's expensive to go and drill. So we're pulling out information from subtle changes in the geophysical information. And if you just click one more time, and then utilizing that to be able to better predict what's happening on the subsurface area. Here we're looking at Western Victoria. We're pulling that information out. It's being extracted. It's showing what the geology and the features are there. It's helping the geologists conventionally target, but we're also using that information as input data into our AI machine learning predictive capabilities. Next slide. And then just one more click. And so what does this mean? It means that we can get faster to targets. So here, the bright white and dark colors in the subsurface and this part of Indonesia that we've done recently as a case study, we're pulling out things that are really attractive and potential targets, going from data to drill target very successfully. This is an area highly mineralized on surface. The client's looking at where can we find deeper targets and analogs in that area. So we're helping them to be able to meet that objective. Next slide. Overall benefits: reduced environmental footprint, cheaper, less expensive methods to be able to find targets, and faster time to information for our clients. Next slide. So we've been, I guess, at the cusp of some of these big trends. We're very busy. We had an excellent last quarter, $1.9 million in revenue. We've only been commercializing the technology for the last 12 to 18 months. We're getting consistent quarter-on-quarter growth over that period. We also attract quite a bit of funding from state and federal governments for critical minerals. But we are also seeing a very strong demand from companies that are looking at exploiting what they see as a game changer potentially in the mining sector, for being able to see patterns within data. Next slide. Just quickly, I mean, we're working with a couple of hundred clients at the moment, some large contracts for more than $500,000, some very small. We're looking at expanding the relationships we have with those client bases. Our biggest growth profile is probably going to come within the Australian market, better servicing many of the companies that we're working with. However, we are seeing really strong demand out of China, India, and North America, which we're looking to service through our growth pipeline. Next slide. Where we sort of sit at the moment, this is sort of some of the goals we've set ourselves. We're between that 5 to 10 million ARR situation. We're looking at being able to grow that base through expansion, through M&A activity where we can. We've seen other companies, largely private, grow by acquisition in this area. Many of the, I guess, the people who invest within SensOre, this is one of the few areas and companies that you can get exposure to mining technology. A lot of this has been dominated by the VC space, Many of the big raises have been limited to those large institutional raises, whereas here we're looking at how we grow that business over time and be able to ride what we see as a very strong trend in AI and critical minerals that are driving growth in our business. Next slide. I just wanted to chat very quickly about some of the lithium work we've been doing. When we look into this data sets, we see huge patterns and huge opportunity for lithium. We've been funded by Deutsche Rohstoff out of Germany. They're looking at bringing battery technology into the European Union to address some of those energy challenges brought on by the markets that have been affected potentially by the Russia-Ukraine issues. They wanted to secure supply for Europe and other places to lithium. We can see in the data where there are opportunities. It's the co-location of lithium potential with gold that sees that many of the gold companies cannot liberate the lithium rights that be able to explore for that at the same time as doing their duty to their gold fundamentals. So we've been able to pair up funding with lithium appetite from those explorers. We've been able to acquire the lithium rights in a joint venture, and we get an equity exposure, utilising our data creatively to create potential upside from discovery, similar to an explorer. Next slide. So yeah, we've been listed for 2 years, coming up in February. We're tightly held. We're in a very strong growth process, and we completed a capital raise back about 6 weeks ago. So looking forward to the potential in the future. Next slide. I think we're coming to the end. So just to wrap up, we are about applying really good science, both in the AI and in the geoscience sector. Utilising all the available data. We're the only company looking at being able to pull together big data sets in geoscience and make it available to third parties. We think we can be able to make a big difference, not only to our shareholders, but also to the industry and to society as a whole by opening this up to new markets and hopefully disrupt conventional exploration. Thanks very much. Back to you, Manny.
Thank you, Richard. That's fascinating. As you say, there's not a lot of opportunities to get exposure to those sort of that sort of mining resources technology. You're right about that. One quick question, you've touched on several commodities throughout the presentation, but if we were to say to you, what is the number one commodity that you're seeing, that the customers are coming to you to help in identifying? If there was one commodity out there, what would it be? Is it as simple as lithium, critical minerals? What is it?
It's as simple as lithium. I mean, we have no tool other than LiDAR or others to be able to see where pegmatites are sticking out of the ground. There's not commonly known fact that when you assay for lithium, you use a lithium flux in the assay methodologies. So you can't usually detect cost effectively for lithium. So it's the least assayed for major element in the Australian data set. So I believe there are huge discoveries still sitting there in drill core because it wasn't assayed for lithium. That potential hasn't been realised, and it is a potential game changer for Australia, reducing the lithium or increasing supply of lithium, reducing battery prices, being able to make the energy transition happen, and Australia can be a dominant player in that.
Great, thank you. And in terms of, and obviously this is, you are looking at AI. It's very technology, centric, very technology centric. How much R&D are you doing, and how much further can you develop your existing technology and proprietary technology, you further improve what you can offer your customers?
Yeah, we're generating a bit like Life Science ECZ before. We're a pipeline of new products, and I talked about a couple today, which was Wormy and Couchy, that are looking at just specific data sets and applying good science and machine learning capability to be able to extract more from that data. Well, the problem with the geoscience is the data is very sparse. Like sometimes it's 20 kilometres apart and it's expensive to collect. So utilising these tools to be able to give exploration companies and investors insights into that data. We have a generation, a pipeline of new R&D projects that we're bringing forward. And one we're looking at the moment is hydrogen. Hydrogen is something that we believe we're doing an R&D project on whether we can detect hydrogen using the geophysical information and properties. It's an exciting time, and that's coming out of research that was available in Europe just recently. Yeah, we'll watch this space on that one.
Great. Yeah, well, I agree. Hydrogen's an interesting one. You'll probably get a knock on the door soon, I would have thought. But and the last question from us, yeah, in terms of your balance sheet, are you well enough funded? Are you comfortable that you have what you need in terms of funding and balance sheet strength to deliver what deliver on the plans that you do have for the business going forward?
We're definitely looking on that growth factor. I mean, I think we're quite excited by the potential for growing the company, not just organically on our existing balance sheet, but how we combine our technologies with other parties potentially in the future. And that will require, I guess, a growing business. I mean, we're working with our existing suppliers, and we're doing well at the moment. There's so much more opportunity here. I think when I look at a company like Index, which went from an equivalent market cap that we have at the moment to a more than $1 billion company, they did that by acquisitions over five to six acquisitions over a decade. And that's the type of growth we want to emulate and be able to look not at what we are at the moment, but what we can be in the future.
I mean, one last one actually, and there's obviously a fair bit of M&A activity in this space, and I think you did mention something in the preso around about that. Are you seeing that? Are you seeing interest?
Definitely, there's been some big consolidation in this sector. I mean, transactions in relation to Sequent, Micromine, Datamine, or a lot of these companies. There've been a lot of consolidation in the sector. And that has meant that, I guess, the companies have grown, but they've gone away from their research base. So there's a gap in the market in that small to medium growth area because it's been hollowed out by private equity and others who've acquired some of the leaders in those fields and cut back on development, in my view, of the R&D that drives the real essence of why people utilize them to begin with.